kind of jumps. So look at those. Which ones do we want to see? Do go over here. 4. Any others in that first objective? Make sure you guys are writing this down. It should help you on the quiz. Remember that the quiz goes back and replaces previous quizzes as well our grade 4. So number 4, you have a fraction that equals another fraction. You have to cross multiply. The negative on the outside, you will not put with both, just put with one of them. Does not matter which one. So let's say I put it with the 9. Whether you put the parentheses or go ahead and distribute is up to you. Which side you put it on also does not matter as long as you multiply it across diagonally. Then distribute. Noah, make sure you're writing this down. Guys, tap Colton, make sure he's writing this down. Then your goal is to get all the variables on one side and all the constants on the other. So it does not matter how you do that. Let's say I added 36 over. And then because I moved 36 to the right, I'd have to move my ends back to the left. So I'd have negative 21n equals 108. And then I could divide. You'll get a fraction or a decimal. You can write either one. So if I were writing the fraction, I could put it into my calculator, alpha y equals, put it in, and it would simplify to negative 36 over 7. Or if I wanted the decimal, I could divide that and get negative 5.14. What questions do we have on that one?
Can we do number 5?
5.
Yeah.
Great. 5 is like 4, but they're not in fractions. It's basically at this step. So you'll have to distribute here. So negative 4n minus n minus 5 equals 16 plus 2n. Combine like terms on the same side. And then the rules are the same. Try to get all the variables on one side, all the constants on the other. Does not matter how you do that. So let's say I wanted to add 5n. And then I could subtract 16. So we have negative 21 equals 17. 7? I don't know why I said 17, sorry. And then we could divide both sides by 7. So the n would equal negative 3. Sid, make sure you're writing this down. Remember that with all of your multi-step equations, you can take your answer, put it back in, and see if your size equal. Do you have any questions on those? The next objective skips to objective 4, solving compound inequalities. Which of those do we have questions on, want to see, go over, review? So 8 is an or, so we could do an and, 5 or 7.
6.
6 is another or, so those will be solved the same. So we could do 5 or 7. So that gives you one of each type. So let's do 7 first. When you see it condensed like that, it's all together. This is your and. You're going to solve it all together. So do everything to everything. Your goal is still to get the b in the middle, or the variable, by itself. So get rid of everything else by starting off by subtracting everything by 3. And then after we have that, get b by itself by dividing everything by -6. It's my fan. That's making my fun. Because we're dividing by a negative, all your signs are going to change directions, pluses. But when we write this, it always has to be least to greatest with less than or less than or equal to. So we're going to take this whole thing and flip it. So that would be that final answer. Then if we're graphing it, we would start at -6, that would be an open circle, end at 1, that would be a closed circle, and there would be a line connecting them in between. So and should always overlap. They should always be going towards each other. Questions on that one? For the or inequality, you have 2 different inequalities. You're going to be solving them separately. So I'm going to rewrite them so I have a little bit more space. If you also rewrite them, make sure you write down everything. I think last time you forgot some things, like forgot a 2 or a -1 at the end, which threw everything off. So be careful with those. And then solve one by itself. The goal is still the same, put all the variables on one side, constants on the other. So let's say I subtract 2b and then add 5. This will become b is greater than or equal to 7. That would be done. Then you could solve the other. So let's say I do the same thing, subtract 2b. And since I move the b's to the right, I have to move the numbers, the constants, to the left. So we have -4 is greater than b. You could leave it like that, or you can rearrange it. If you rearrange it, just make sure it's pointing in the same direction towards the b. Put or in between the 2. And then with your ors, they're going to graph apart. So b is less than -4 is going to be an open circle to the left. B is greater than or equal to 7 would be a closed circle to the right. What questions do we have about either of those inequalities. Go on to the next page. So the next page goes back to objective 3, which is parallel perpendicular lines. Which of those do we want to see do go over review? 1. Any others? Any in this objective or this part? Six. We could do 3 as well. I think someone said 3. Any others? Okay, so we'll start with 1. You have to write any equation that's parallel to this one. Parallel means the slope is the same. That means whatever the slope is, that's what it's going to also still be, the 1/3. Then you're going to write a new equation in that same format, y equals mx plus b. The slope is the same. Give me a different y-intercept that's not 2, or positive 2. Someone give me a number. 3 works. So the slope has to be the same, and you just have to have a different y-intercept. Does not matter what that y-intercept is. It can't be the same. Questions on that? Some of you aren't writing this stuff down and paying attention. Your quiz is today. 3 is perpendicular, so we have to write an equation that's perpendicular to this one. So you have to know the slope of this, and if you're not sure, you have to use your Hoyle-Bucks, because it's an x equals. So the slope of this one is what? This would be a vertical line, yes, what's the slope? What would the slope of a vertical line be? What does the U stand for? You get a problem with this, you'll need to know what it means. What type of slope does a vertical line have? What does that U stand for? Undefined. But if it's perpendicular, we need the opposite. So we need our slope to have a 0 slope, which means it's going to be a y equals. Someone give me a number so we can make an equation. Sure. Questions on that one? So that's something you have to have some background knowledge in. Know your Hoyle-Bucks. For number 4, it's perpendicular, so we have to look at our slope, take it, flip it. It's negative, so make it positive. What would our new slope be? We took that fraction, we flipped it. What would that be? 5/4, positive 5/4. So we're going to use that slope in our new equation. So y equals 5/4 x. Someone give me a y-intercept. Perpendicular can be the same y-intercept or different, does not matter. Yeah, do the opposite. So it was negative, we made it positive. Other questions on 4? Okay, let's do 6. For these questions, you'll need this formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. It's also on the board. If it's asking for something that is parallel, the slope is going to be the same. But you're not going to use anything else. You can cross it out so you're not confused by it. So you have your m, your x1 and y1, and you're going to use all of those and put it into your equation. Y minus our y1 would be minus 2 equals our slope 1/5 times x minus our x1, which is minus 5. Before you do anything, you have to make the minus negative a plus. So y plus 2 equals 1/5, and then in parentheses x plus 5. Then you'll need to distribute. And your last step will be getting y by itself. Getting rid of the 2, so subtracting it to the other side. So this would be parallel to the original and go through that point. What questions do we have on that process? Do we have any other questions on this page? Allison. 8 is now perpendicular, so we have to change the slope, flip it, and make it negative. What would that new slope be? -7. You could just leave it as -7. You can get rid of that entire equation. You don't need it anymore. Now you have m, you have x1, and you have y1. And you're going to use that same formula as before. The rest of the steps are the same. So y minus -5 equals -7 in parentheses x minus 1. Here we only have to make one of the things positive, so we can make this positive and distribute at the same time. So y plus 5 equals -7x plus 7. And then get y by itself by subtracting by 5. So y equals -7x plus 2 would be the answer to that problem. Go on to the next page. Your next page is objective 2, your intercepts, and this goes on it's this page and the next. So find any that you want to see do go over from your intercepts. We don't have any questions on any of the intercepts problems.
27 count?
27, okay. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Alright. 30. Okay. So for 27, you're trying to find the x and y intercepts. So you're going to put 0 in for whatever you're not solving for. So if I'm solving for x, I'm going to put 0 in for y. And then I'm going to solve for x. This middle term would become 0, so I don't have to bring it down. I can skip to the next step. And then solve for x by dividing everything by 5. So that would be my x-intercept, where 6 is x and 0 is what I put in for y, so that's my y value. And then we would do the same thing for y. But now we're putting 0 in for x and solving for y. This first term is just going to become 0, so you don't have to bring it down. So set negative 3y equal to 30 and solve for y. Divide both sides by negative 3. So this will be your y value. You put 0 in for x, so that would be your order pair. And those would be your two answers, the x and y intercept. Questions on that one?
How would that be undefined? Like that sort of equation?
What do you mean?
If x and y were both zeros.
You can't put them in as zeros at the same time. You have to do it separately. Because then it wouldn't make sense. Okay. 30, you're just looking for the x and y intercepts. So wherever it crosses the x and y axis, write those as order pairs. So on the y-axis, it crosses at 4, so that would be 0, 4. On the x-axis, it crosses at 6, so that would be 6, 0, and that would be it. Are there any others in the intercepts section you want to see to go over? We can do this really quickly before lunch. This goes through the origin, so your x and y intercept are the same at 0, 0. When we get back from lunch, we're going to finish up the last two objectives, the factoring, and then you'll take your quiz. On the last two pages, they're both factoring. So look at just 9.5. Which of those do we want to see you go over? 18. those two, and then that will be like all the different types of problems you'll see in this section. So as always, look and see, is there something you can divide out of each one? Is there something that these have in common that you can divide out? 4. So then what would be left?
1 and 1 in
Squared.
3n
Plus 3n minus 4. And in this section, you want them to look like this, where there's nothing in front of the variable that's squared. Then the rule is find two numbers that multiply to be this last number and add or subtract to be the middle. So it has to multiply to be -4, but add or subtract to be 3. What two numbers would work? Think about your factors of 4. And if you add or subtract them together, which ones give you 3? 4 and 1. And one of them would have to be negative. The 1 would have to be negative. So then you'll have, to bring down the 4, you'll have two factors. Put the variable first in both, and the two numbers you found after that. What questions do we have on that? Is going to be similar. Is there something we can divide out of each one? Do they each have an end? One. So that wouldn't change anything. So then you're looking for two numbers that multiply to be -2, but add or subtract to be -1. Think about your factors of 2. There's really just 2 and 1. Which one would be negative if you had to add or subtract to get -1? So +2 minus 1 would be -1. Have to be the opposite. So -2 plus 1. And then you can make your two factors. N is your variable, put that first, and then your two numbers, -2 plus 1. Do we have any other questions on this factoring section? Find questions in 9.6, either on this page or on the other one that we want to see do go over. 21 has big numbers, so we might have to factor out a GCF. Let's choose one that has maybe smaller numbers. 20. That would work. Okay. So let's do those two. So first, does this have something we can divide out of each one? We divide 1 again. So nothing really would change. But the difference with this one is we multiply the first number and the last number. So that would give us -48. And find two numbers that multiply to be -48, but add to be -8. Think about your factors of 48. If you're not sure what those are, start dividing in your calculator by 1, by 2, 48 divided by 3, by 4. Keep going till you find something. 12 and 4. One of them would have to be negative. The 12 would be the negative one. So then you rewrite this into 4 terms. The first and the last stay the same. The middle 2 are now the 2 numbers you found, but they need the variable that was in the equation. Does not matter the order. Then you split that down the middle and look for what do these 2 have in common. What could we divide out of both of those? 3 and B. Which will leave us with B minus 4. What could we divide out of these last 2? 4. Positive 4. So if we divided that out of both, that would leave us with B minus 4. We want these inside things to be the same. So that would be one of our factors. Everything on the outside, 3B plus 4, would be your other. And those would be your answers.
What questions do we have on that before we do 21?
Alright, 21. Is there something you can divide out of each one? It is 2. So if we divided 2 from each one, we'd have 7r squared plus 55r minus 8. Then the rules are the same. Multiply 7 and negative 8. Find 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 56, but add to be positive 55.
Add or subtract.
Those 2 numbers are really close together, so one of your factors is going to be 1. So 1 and 56. Which one would be negative? Positive 56, negative 1. Keep bringing down that 2 on the outside. First and last term stay the same. But the middle 2 become the 2 you just found. Does not matter the order. You just have to make sure you have the variable. Split that down the middle. Keep bringing down the 2 on the outside. What did these 2 have in common? What could we divide out of 7r squared plus 56r? And what else do they have in common? R. Just the R. It looks squared because of the squiggly line. So 7r, so that would leave us with r plus 8. What could we divide out of the last 2? Negative 1. So if nothing, you can always divide out a 1, but this one's negative, so negative 1. That would make that r plus 8. Keep bringing down your 2. The ones that are the same, r plus 8, and then the outside ones, 7r minus 1.
Do we have any other last minute general questions?
This quiz is the same as before. Still, you guys can collect collaborate, as well as it is also open notes. So if you've been taking notes, you can use your notes. If you haven't, you don't have notes to use. You cannot use other people's notes, but you can use your own. So you can take out whatever notes you want to include the review. Put your phones and smartwatches up in the calculator pocket.